Okay, right. Morning to Off Lead with Stuart and Emma, episode 3, season 2. We're on now.
Good morning.
So this morning we are joined by Paul Hinchley, who is an international judging superstar, I believe. So we're going to leave that. So that's what we got this morning. We're going to talk to Paul, hopefully, about judging in general. Hopefully talk about what he plans with his courses and why he plans what he plans, and then also talking about a bit about the international side of judging as well. So morning, Paul, thank you for joining us.
No worries.
Morning.
Yeah. So first things first, Paul, we're just going to sort of jump straight in really with your judging. I know you've been judging for quite a while now, and you're now a champ judge, aren't you, as well as an international?
Yeah.
When did you get your champ judging?
It took a little while to get the champ judging. Officially, I was validated, signed off, rubber stamped by the KC back in 2019.
Okay.
And had my first champ booked at Thames, for that year. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and everything, all of those appointments that year got cancelled. And then the following ones, even though I was, keen to get on with it, I think a lot of shows were quite fair to judges who'd been cancelled and sort of just kind of moved them forward year on year. So I did my first ever, even though I've been judging for nearly 15 years now, my first ever champ judging was this year. Perhaps we can touch on that later, because it was a bit of a revelation for me and I absolutely loved doing it. So,
and I had the privilege, I believe, of running it. It was why, wasn't it? Yeah, and what an amazing course it was. And I'm not just saying that, Paul. We touched on it the other day when we were chatting about IMCA. And I find your course is very kind for the dogs.
Okay.
Not so kind for the handler. But if you can see the dog's line and you can make it happen, the dog's line is phenomenally kind to the dog.
Yes, because that's one of my main aims about course design. Certainly in the last sort of like 5-6 years, I've learned a lot and developed a lot in my judging, and it's always quite sobering when you look back on your judging and the courses that you set 10 years ago. Oh my God, how agility has changed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a chap come back to us at training recently who's had 10 years away from agility through illness. And has now got himself sorted and fit again. What's going on? And some of the comments that he's making about, just the terminology is completely different. Who knew about a threadle 10 years ago?
I know, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I still struggle. I still really struggle.
Party tent a threadle.
Yeah, exactly.
So big changes. But no, that's reassuring to hear with it. I do get a lot of feedback. Some positive, some not so positive, but that's part of the mantle of being a judge, particularly at sort of the higher levels. But that's my main focus really, is making sure that it's smooth for the dogs and things like that. I guess the kind of picture I have in my head is that I'm going to set the path for the dog, and in my head I'm envisaging it a bit like a railway line.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've set the width of that railway line, whether it's narrow gauge on a particular part of the course or wide gauge. And you don't have tight turns too many times on a railway track. If it's so tight, you actually put a turntable in. So that's sort of kind of in my mind. But to make it more challenging, more interesting, the risks you'll hopefully see on my courses, if your dog steps outside of the railway lines, there's loads of opportunities and invitations to go and make their own course up.
Stuart, you had that, didn't you?
Yeah. So and to me that's what it's about. But you kind of got to be a bit careful as well. And it's something that as a judge trainer I try and reinforce to people, is that it's all well and good setting off course traps, but if your off course trap is an A-frame, and it's 4 meters away from the long jump that you're asking the dog to go over, you really shouldn't be putting that as a potential trap, because the dog's going to hit it at an angle, at speed, unsafe. And I learned that many years ago when I judged out in the Netherlands in gamblers, and I hadn't taken into account the opposite approach to the A-frame that some people do, and dogs were hitting it at sort of like around about 45 degrees. And that was a big learning curve for me. It was never intentional. If they'd done it the way that was in my head, it would all have been fine. But Gamblers is a unique event anyway.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, games are always a little bit different, aren't they?
You never know where people are going to go. So
yeah, I know you touched a little bit there on feedback, Paul, when you were saying that you've had good feedback and some not so good feedback. How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the not so good feedback?
I think I find myself in a not a difficult position, maybe a unique position or a different position than a lot of judges I talk to. So for those that don't know, I'm an accredited judge trainer for the Kennel Club. I made a decision.
I didn't know that. Congratulations. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so many moons ago, I made a decision that, I've always had a positive judging career, but wanted to, without being too twee, give something back to the sport. But also there was a lot of stuff that I felt personally needed to change within judging, all around course design and safety, etc. And I'm not one to sit on the sidelines and moan and bitch. I'll either shut up or I'll get involved. Yeah. So that was my way of doing it. So I became an accredited judge trainer for the Kennel Club. I run seminars a couple of times a year. And part of that process was deciding to give a couple of free places on those courses to existing judges rather than all brand new, just to offer that top up, that continuing development. So in terms of feedback, one of the biggest challenges for judges is that everybody has an opinion in a jersey, because it's all about our relationship with our dog. So we're all unique in our approach and we have our own paradigm about what's good, what's bad, what's safe, what's easy, what's hard. And we're all really bloody competitive. Really competitive. So we want,
and some people are better at giving their opinions than others, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. So you can't expect an amateur sport where there's around about 10,000 people competing that everybody is an arch diplomat. You just can't expect that. Some people have people skills, some people don't. I'm fairly fortunate that I'm kind of got a bit of a reputation for being a diplomat, both in my private life and in work. I don't like conflict. I don't run from it, but I don't like conflict. I'd rather try and find a softer path, a softer resolution. But I think in terms of feedback, you get less negative, stroke aggressive, uncomfortable feedback if you have confidence. And sometimes that's about game face, and sadly what you'll see is some judges will their game face is aggressive.
Right.
When somebody comes up to them, could you just go and check that jump distance for me? I've already checked it. No, I'm not doing that. So they put this sort of persona on that it's that blank mask, but it doesn't engage with the person. Whereas I'm quite happy to do that. Anyone can come up to me on my course and
you're very approachable, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I'll go and talk with them and try and show them and educate them, if you like, without sounding too condescending. Educate them about why I've done what I've done, because I don't just throw a load of sticks down on the floor. There's a real process to course design in my view. You're looking at the level, you're looking at building. So for example, open side weave entry versus closed side weave entry. One's difficult, one's not so difficult. But if you have a straight line open side weave entry, it's harder than the straight line closed side. But you can make the closed side harder if you put it fast out of a tunnel, or put another obstacle near it. So there's all sorts of things that you can stack up. So you
and do you think that a course can have too many challenges?
Definitely.
Sometimes I walk courses and it's like, oh, for God's sake, just like how many times are you, not you personally, but how many times are you testing one skill?
So give credit where credit's due. Many moons ago, when I first started upping my game judging and started to have a bigger ambition for champ and for international, I went on a training course with Lee Gibson many
right years. I did his one.
And Lee showed me something that I've kept going ever since and refined and added to. So Lee talked about having a list of challenges for your handler, and then grading them. So I've got a big long list of challenges, and they're color coded. So it's green, amber, and red in terms of difficulty. So for example, every one of my courses, you will get a slight advantage if you have a decent start line weight. Okay. If you haven't got a start line weight,
it'll tip there to everybody.
You need to be able to run a little bit quicker. Because in my view, a start line weight is a fundamental skill in agility. It should, if we can train a dog to weave and do a flat out running contact, we can surely get it to sit in one position for 5 minutes. So
Yeah,
it's
that's a
not
whole nother story.
That's
isn't
a
it?
whole
We've
nother
done
story.
that subject.
So that's my number one challenge, and then it goes through then from push rounds to threadles at speed, to off course tracks and all of those things. So when I'm designing a course, I try and pick out a couple of those elements from, let's say we're doing a 6-7, not necessarily a champ, because champs are unique, that I've now found. But if you're doing a 6-7, you want to challenge them. The best courses I love judging in the UK are cross singles.
Yeah.
Because there's only one way to run a cross singles, and that's flat out. Because you've got.
Right. I've never chased the singles, I must admit.
Yeah. So it's really fun to judge because you can put a nice fast flowing course on with some technical stuff in. So I'll cherry pick from my list, 2 greens, 2 ambers, and 3 reds because it's a 6-7. And then I'll look to make a course at there. There's that, and if I challenge them, one of my challenges is, can you do a push round? Okay, I mean, whatever terminology, around the back, a push round or whatever. My job as a judge is to set the course so that's not too arduous on the dog. Okay, so I don't like doing 90-degree push rounds, where the dog's facing the jump and they have to go all the way around the back.
Yeah,
I'll always try and put a little bit of a slant on it so the dog's not quite so hard. But if you're doing that and making the handler do a German or that sort of serpentine, so to get to the next obstacle, that's physically really hard for a dog. But it's a test that we all know and we're familiar with in agility, so it's fine. It's legitimate to put it in, but don't put it in 5 times.
Yeah.
By the end of the course, the dog's going to be exhausted, and you're not testing the dog's skill on a push round. You're testing their stamina, and I don't think that's my job. My job's not.
I was just thinking about that as you said that, actually, because although we kind of all go for safety and everything else, and that's what the modern world is about, which is great. I guess particularly sort of top ends, 6 and 7s, our dogs should be agile, should be well balanced, and should be fit, and should be able to pick up cues on a turn. So, like you say, I guess it's okay to as long as it's safe to test it once or twice. But like you say, I had a course where it was a champ course, and we had to have the smalls. They set the same course for the small, medium, and larges. I felt that the course suited larges better because it was all maximum distances. Okay. So a maximum distance for a large dog may take 2 or 3 strides, but for my little kit, that's going to be like 8 or 9 strides flat out for the whole entire course. I did love running the course, but Kit was knackered, absolutely exhausted afterwards. So how would you kind of deal with, like, if you had to say do one course for small, medium, and large? How do you look at that?
So I'm fairly adamant as a judge. Small and medium are different dogs, so I will design them differently from intermediate and large. I think the 2 you can group together as long as you're aware of the different issues on it. So, for example, and it's not a prejudice thing, small dogs and small dog handlers, in my experience, tend to take the wrap rather than the slice. Okay, because there seems to be a perception, and this is in the majority, not the experience, that there seems to be a perception that small dogs deal with wraps better than big dogs, just from a physical point of view. But I've always been trained by my lovely lady wife that, generally speaking, wraps are crap and the slice is nice if you want speed.
Slice for speed,
So you're always sort of looking for that. But so as a judge, when you're designing a course for the different height, you have to be aware of that and bear that in mind, that people will take the wrap more often, and it's not an absolute, but more often people will take the wrap with a smaller dog. So
for me, I guess it depends whether probably champ agility or champ jumping, I would probably take the wrap. Fine and large, obviously take the slice.
So in the final you'll go for the slice, but in the previous 2 you'll probably go for the wrap.
Maybe.
The key thing for me is that judge, you have to be aware of those things. You have to know the sport, the varies, the anomalies in the sport. Because if you put a contact after a jump, okay, your job is to make sure that entry to that contact is safe. And if you assume that everybody's going to go for the slice and make the wrap a dangerous entry, then you failed as a judge.
Yeah, I did the Greg Derek Lee Gibson course just for my own teaching. I've got I don't want to be a judge, but I thought it would help my teaching and planning courses when I'm teaching. And the discussions around the approach to contact equipment, and also we had to look for dangers for the handlers, and like the seesaw, like pointing towards the handler's face and that sort of thing. It's
so and it's things like that you have to be aware of on a daily basis. But those, so you can set a course for small and medium and make it so that your deceleration before your contact, because I always try and do that. I always try and give a reason for the dog to decelerate a little bit before it heads to the contact. If you design that course so that the wrap is the obvious line onto the A-frame and it's nice and straight and safe, but then you leave that in place for your intermediate and large, who again the majority are likely to take the slice. You might actually give you have a cracking small medium course, but you'll get slated for the entry onto your A-frame.
Yeah.
And I've seen that. You have to be fairly strong to judge. So I went to KC Festival, must be about 6 years ago, maybe even longer actually. I was I judged the Saturday in the main ring, so I was in there all day. Real kudos, real feather in my cap as a judge. And I had small and medium to judge, and large as well. And I actually sent my courses in, and they were sent back to say, we haven't got the time to do the small and medium courses differently. So I actually wanted to do a different course for small and a different course for medium. And the constraints of the schedule meant that I couldn't. They didn't have time for people to walk the course differently. So I went away and redesigned those courses, knowing that I had to amalgamate the two. And in actual fact, you're probably at the lower end of difficulty rather than the higher end that I would have liked to have challenged people in that environment. So you kind of got to look at that. Nowadays, I think, because I've got a little bit more of a reputation, I think I'll probably be a bit more adamant to say no, that if you want me to judge, that's what I'm going to do. Because
I guess sometimes, I think we touched on this before, Stuart, as well, it's the the pressure of the event is enough, isn't it?
And if you look at Olympia and if you look at Crufts, you've got minutes to set a course, let alone minutes. So we all get stressed and worry about, oh, we've got 8 minutes to walk it. Well, that's more than the judge has got to set it at Olympia. If you look, it's 15 minutes to clear an arena, set an agility course, walk it, run it, clear it. 15 minutes. So you have, and I think that's about the responsibility for that course design. And an interesting point. I mean, my personality is quite yellow, so I do lots of squirrel moments. Forgive me, I do jump around a little bit. But you're talking about those maximum distances. Again, that's about you can't do that for small and medium and large and intermediate together because they all run in different ways. But what I try and remember, make sure is everything is an idea that I did a lot of learning around dog's gait, so I understand lead leg changes, and I think that should be part and parcel for judges on training. Unfortunately, the Kennel Club curriculum doesn't go into as much depth, but that's down to the judge trainer. So we have a core curriculum that we use, and then we should expand on that. So dog's gait, you've got like same as a horse: walk, trot, canter, gallop. So we have to figure that out for our dogs. But what I try and remember is that our dogs are predators. So predators have an extra speed. They've got what I term as kill speed. So when they're sprinting in their flat out gallop after the rabbit across the field, when they get within 2 feet, they need an extra bit of burst, an extra bit of sprint to make that kill. But what we're doing in agility is we're pushing our dogs over a 200-meter course to achieve kill speed and stay in it for 30 to 40 seconds. So you have to remember that dogs, once they get into that kill speed, their deceleration is like the braking distance in a car. It takes longer.
And I guess we're asking them, so dogs in that predatory zone. I've kind of done similar. So I did an equine and canine massage course, and I had to study for 500 hours. And my clients are like anal, like just tell your dog that you're changing lead leg. It's safe. But also coming from a behaviour point of view, I guess putting it like that, I've never thought of it like that, but in that predatory zone, generally they've zoned out. So they can't hear you either. So,
Yes.
And we're asking them to make these split seconds decisions. They're phenomenal, our dogs, aren't they? Really?
And they have to make that decision. Once we've got them to that highest arousal, highest speed, we're asking them to make subtle changes of line and direction, to get themselves straight and lined up for a dog walk. But so your job as a judge should be to give them the opportunity to come out of that red zone, that flat out zone. I love seeing them run at that flat out sprint, but you need to design the course to give them the opportunity to slow down. Your entry to your dog walk might be beautiful and straight, but if you've put it, 9-10 meters from the last 5 obstacles, by the time they get to there, they're going to be doing 130 miles an hour. They're going to be absolutely flat out. So your job as a judge is to try and bring them back down to, not down to trot, but at least put them back down into gallop or a fast canter so that they can collect themselves, get themselves sorted. And the biggest one I see the problem with at the moment, to me, is the weaves. Is people don't think that a dog has to decelerate to go into the weaves.
I taught Kit to decel. So some of our big dogs really struggle, don't they?
Yeah. So if you've got an entry to a weave after a 40-50 meter sprint, then make it so the dog's got to really decelerate. Bring them back on themselves, so they have to curl around. They have to put the brakes on. You don't want it in a dead straight line. Just because and people think, we'll make a nice easy grade 2, grade 3 course. We'll give them 4 jumps in a dead straight line, and then we'll put the weaves in, and we'll put the weave nice and straight for them. Well, the dog's going to find it really hard because they're inexperienced. They're going flat.
I noticed that at the weekends, and I'm glad you brought it back round to grade 1 and 2, because we have a lot of listeners that are 1s and 2s and the early stages. And the amount of dogs when the owner said weave, sniffed the grounds or went off because they're like, I can't get in there. Literally couldn't physically get in there. It is. I'm having problems with Candice and Cookie at the moment. He just can't literally he needs to decel. So talking about early grade courses, it's easy for us to, as grade 7 handlers, to go and walk a course on a grade 7 class and think, I don't like that course, I'm not going to run it. But when you start, you want that clear round, you want to be competing, you want that. And sometimes I'll look at, grade 1 or 2 courses, and I think that judge really needs some help because it's quite spiteful or, and it's unnecessary. And then I struggle because obviously we're trying to keep our clients, high and it's okay, you can do it, find this line and go and run your own course. And of course, they haven't got the confidence to do that. So how can we help our younger judges, if you like? And when I say younger, I don't mean in age, I mean in
less experience.
Yeah.
So the only thing that there's two, to me, there's 2 approaches. One that gets the hairs up on the back of my neck, and the other one that is the longer, slow burn, but I think we'll achieve it. So to me, it's all about education. It's about mentorship. It's about support. It's about showing value. So my belief has always been, as a judge, my primary role is to give value for the blood, sweat, and tears and money that people invest in their dogs and their dog training. I would love to think that people will look at a schedule and go, Paul's judging, right? Yeah, let's go.
I never used to, but that I was talking about this the other day. I was like, oh shit, I can't get round his courses ever.
But that's, to me, that's a reputation in a good way. It's a challenge, rather than, I'm not going on his course because they're hideous. I'm not going to put my dog on that. It's about educating, and maybe this is your bit of controversy, I don't know. So at the moment, as a Kennel Club accredited judge trainer, I have the Kennel Club's backing and support at a show, if I'm not competing in that ring, to go to a judge and say, your course is unsafe, and ask them to change it. And the Kennel Club will back me and support me on that. What I can't do is go in and say, your course is too difficult, your lines aren't good enough. On a safety point of view. So if I approach a judge, fortunately I've got some diplomacy skills, But sometimes it's happened. I've gone to judge. No, I'm happy with that. I'm not going to change it. If it's a safety matter, I can then raise that with the show secretary, and I can go through the incident process, and we can usually get that changed. And it happened recently at KC Festival. There was a really dangerous entry to a dog walk. The judge had sort of like really hadn't quite clicked. He'd put his jump. His jump was in a dead straight line with the dog walk. But the approach to that jump was from sort of like 10 meters off to the right. So although it was 2 jumps up and down, what had actually happened is because he put that maximum distance, the dogs were always coming on a slice to that.
Yeah, and some dogs bank, don't they, as well, around the
so that judge didn't see that, didn't want to see it, decided it was going to continue. So we escalated that, brought the show managers in, and we had to rerun the whole course. Okay, so that's a big controversy. That's a big challenge for that judge, and that judge may probably, but quite possibly, decide, I'm not going to do this again. It was really uncomfortable for me. I was at the biggest dog show in the world, and I had to change my course and rerun the whole thing. Total embarrassment. What I would have liked to do is to have some accredited judge trainers who are given an additional authority, or not power, that's the wrong word, but a mandate to go in and say to a judge, let's look at your lines. It is about safety, but it's about comfort, it's about competition, it's about skills.
And I guess some people would get very, very defensive about that. I think I probably would.
And make some of those connections. And I think the way forward for me is to have a head judge. So
that's okay, but I mean, you can do that at the big shows. But the problem is, it's generally like our lower grade courses. Some of our small shows, we're not going to be able to do that, are they? I guess because I mean, even some of the smaller shows, they don't have to put their courses in, do they, to be approved?
I was talking a little bit about that the other day. We were at a show and we were talking about different courses, and there was different sort of styles of courses at the same show. And I was sort of looking and going, the judge, let's say in the first ring that had the course that I would probably choose not to run. And then you got in the ring next to him, you got the most beautifully, designed, flowing, perfectly designed course. And I'm like, do they not look and think, shit, I'm a bit off here? Or do they just...
At what point do you change it?
Yeah.
So Stuart, if you're driving on the motorway and you've been driving for 30 years and you always indicate when you pull out into the middle lane, you will always indicate. Okay? If you've never indicated to pull out, no matter how many people you see indicating, you will still do it because it's a muscle memory, it's a paradigm, it's a way of doing it. And I think what we need to be able to do for judges is to find a way that is softer than the incident book, because that's a horrible word. Let's have a feedback.
They need supporting. Judges need supporting. Without them, we can't go and run our courses, can we?
Have you ever shopped at Waitrose?
No.
Occasionally.
When you go into Waitrose, when you go to the till, you pay for your shopping and they give you a little token.
Yes, and you choose your charity.
On your way out, there's 3 boxes, and Waitrose contribute to 3 charities. And you put your token in whichever charity you think's the most deserving, and then the one that gets the most tokens, that's who Waitrose support for that year.
Okay.
So why don't we have a feedback mechanism like that for judges? So which is the course you most enjoyed today? At the end of that, then you can look at and say, so the judges can go back. Nobody's made a disparaging comment, but they look and say, well, nobody liked my course. Okay. So they all put the coins in Stuart Doughty's course. Everybody looked at him. So I can make a choice. I can either change what I'm doing. I can be thick-skinned and just put up with it, or maybe I can go and have a chat with Stuart, and try and encourage that behaviour. But at the moment, we can't do that in a kennel club because there's partly it's because it's amateur sport, but also because people do it voluntarily. But there's no continual professional development mandate. So you do.
And I think you've hit the nail on the nail on the coffin there. It's not regulated. So even as a trainer, people can just go out and become a dog trainer tomorrow, and did during the pandemic. I slapped my head at like, suddenly I've got 8 trainers on my doorstep that are now behaviourists, and they've done an online course during the pandemic. So that's half of the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, within the kennel club, we've got training, so, and this is what I talked about, there's 2 different routes. So you can either go down the route where you've got training, So we've got an online forum, there's a Kennel Club Academy that we can put videos and courses on there. There's the online training course that you learn all about the rules and regulations. And then there's a 2-day professional seminar that you go on to actually become a judge. But after that, then 5 years time, you have to do the online again, which is just about rule and regulation change.
5 years is rubbish, isn't it?
Yeah, there's nothing else to mandate you doing that. There's nothing else to say that so this champ judge.
That's what I think. That's where the gap is. 25 hours CPD a year or something like that should be put in, maybe.
You have to be careful about that regulation, though, guys, because the other way of doing it is you go down what I see in UKA, where there's 3, perhaps 4 people within that organisation that.
Oh.
We froze.
Oh no, froze at the wrong point.
You have to. So you have in UKA.
You need to repeat that again. Sorry, Paul.
Okay. So in UKA, as a judge, you have to submit your course for approval prior to running it. Yeah. And there's only 3 or 4 people within that organisation, as far as I'm aware, that have the authority to check those courses. And I accept they're experienced judges, but there are only 3 or 4 people. So again, you get that problem with their paradigm, what they think is right, what they think is appropriate, is what goes down on the ground. And so to me, that's almost a bit over-regulated, because you then don't get the creativity, the style, the different approaches to dog agility that we all love.
That's an interesting point as well. Yeah.
So, and if you look at the way it's gone in other areas, if you look at the American Kennel Club, they've over-regulated to such a degree that when you put a 6-7 course up, it has to have a set number of challenges. So it has to have a set number of off-course traps, a set number of threadles, a set number of this. And to achieve that, what they're starting to see now is judges actually putting ghost obstacles in, non-numbered obstacles, to hit that regulation.
Right.
And also what you find a lot of in American Kennel Club is pinwheels.
Yeah.
Because if you put 2 pinwheels side to side, you've immediately got 4 off-course traps.
Yeah.
But that's because of creativity. It doesn't develop the sport. It doesn't push it forward.
And I guess it's the same as anything, isn't it? Is health and safety can go crazy and go like ridiculous sometimes, So I guess that's the same. Just one other thing. I know we're kind of getting a little bit tight on time, Stuart. We'll start bashing. Okay. One other thing that coming from the horse world that I struggle with sometimes, and perhaps you can come at this from a judge's point of view, is in the horse world, if there is a lame horse, it's down to the judge to say to that handler, your horse is lame, you need to leave the ring. I don't see that in the dog world. And I know we've touched on this before, Stuart, so it's interesting now we've got a judge in how much you want to talk to. What would you do if you see a lame dog?
I've pulled a couple of dogs up, but the caveat is I'm not qualified to do that. I'm not a physio or a massage therapist.
What makes anyone qualified to say that dog's lame, that dog's struggling?
So common sense, okay. But if I challenge a handler and say, I don't think your dog's fit, it's lame, or it's, where do I stop? Do I turn around and say your dog's overweight? Your dog's measure. How many dogs are you measuring every weekend? Weekend.
No, I'm talking about obvious lameness, not our opinion.
Yeah, so
obvious lameness.
What I tend to do, if the dog starts running in my course, to me, that's the handler should have prepared that dog and should be confident the dog's fit and able to do it. If something changes, obviously, whilst the dog's going around the course, I have no problem in stopping that dog.
And if you were encouraging, if you were training grade 1 to 2 judges, would you be encouraging?
Yes, I would say if something changes when the dog's going around, then, if all of a sudden it starts limping, or all of a sudden it starts measuring, or you get 3 refusals or something like that, sometimes I'll go to a handler afterwards when they finish, because you only got 30 seconds to process.
I appreciate that. And I don't want to put everything on the judge.
I'm not qualified, but to me, your dog looks a little bit lame. Get them checked out. And some people can be quite rude, actually.
Exactly that. And that,
so again, it comes back to education. If you look at FCI, okay, so to become an FCI accredited judge, you have to go through about 18 months of training. in terms of you have to understand about breeds, you have to understand about dogs' conformation, you have to understand about gait analysis, basic injuries, and then you do your judging course. So that you almost have to become a breed judge first before you become an agility judge. And
so basically, yeah. So what we're saying
that in its entirety, but I think we need to look at what we're expecting from judges. You know, and I think it's that amateur side of the sport, that lower.
I was just going to say the same thing from our judges' point of view. You're looking at somebody who's done, like you say, a 2-day course, got their judges, you know, their judges certificate, whatever. They're now turning up a show. They get free camping and a lunch.
Yeah.
To stand in a ring for 8 hours, to take some abuse, which they do. Most judges take abuse. To get stated for most of the day, you know, to stand out in the sun, the rain, and whatever, for somebody to bitch and moan and whatever, and then we're asking them then to sort of take on some CP, you know,
and this is where we would be so much in a better position if, first of all, agility was a sport, and secondly, the dog world was regulated. You know, you would be in such a better position.
I just think
I agree with you guys in principle, but I'll always come back to that caveat: is if you over-regulate something, you stifle creativity. And if you look at where our sport how our sport has developed over the last 10 years, that's because we're not stifled by regulation. You know, we're able to do it. We're able to stretch the boundaries. And if you turned up at a course, you know, 10 years ago, you know, that was 215 meters, you know, with 9 to 10 meters between each jump, you probably wouldn't have run it.
No.
Because you wouldn't have been able to.
Or would you though? Because you might do, because you wouldn't know any different, would you? You know, I mean, I've only been. I can't get there because I never trained. When I first started agility, I had a sprolly, you know, and I was young and fit then, so my sprolly used to run around the course after me. You know, I now moved on to proper collies, and you know, I'm really grateful for my distance handling skills. Yeah. I'm embracing mine. I've just got a spaniel.
15 years ago, I would have Fagin, my first dog. He was the solid dog. He was a half second dog, we called him. You know, he's always half a second off the collies, but he'd always get around. I could never get him around these courses now because I had no distance skills with him. Yeah, because I never knew I needed it.
And maybe, I know we're out of time, but I think if we could have you back at some point, Paul, because I think that's a real hot topic in agility net at the moment, isn't it? Is that everybody's saying that the sport is inclusive, but everyone's saying, but it's not inclusive because I can't do it. So maybe that's a topic for a whole other subject.
We have to, as judges, design courses for the majority, right? Because without the majority, there is no sport. You can't put a champ event on unless you've got, you know, thousands of people that train their dogs week in, week out, and turn up and go home with no rosettes and no clear rounds, and you know, without them there is no chance.
And we've all been there, and it's never forgetting where you came from, is it?
My dog at the moment, Zira, she's cracking. She's a phenomenal little dog. She's 5 years old, and I had my second clear round last weekend. And
congratulations. Whose course was it? Whose course was it?
You know, I can't remember.
Oh, that's so bad.
But that's really bad of me, actually. I
wouldn't know.
But it's about that commitment, that enjoyment. We have to bear in mind that fuels the rest of the sport. So you have to design things that are appropriate for those people and make the atmosphere. And I always say to judges when I'm training, is one of the things that we do miss with judging is, you know, enjoy it. Turn up, use it. You know, it's that car key moment. You pull up at the show, before you take the keys out of the ignition, you can decide as a judge what kind of a day you're going to have. Just think logically and think, right, I'm going to walk in saying, morning, everyone. Right, come on, let's have a laugh, let's have a joke. Yeah. Or you can go in there, what's wrong with this? This is crap, that's crap, you know, and it sets the tone.
Doherty is amazing for his personality, isn't he?
Yeah, so your ring party behaves the way you, as a leader of that ring, encourage them to do. So if you're grumpy, if you're negative, if you're you know, creating barriers between you and the competitors, that's what's going to happen on your ring.
That's life though, isn't it? That is life. Right, one quick sentence to so somebody's listening to this thinking, oh, okay, I think I'll become a judge, I'd like to become a judge. A little bit of advice, one sentence, all you got.
So have a sense of humor, okay, and make sure that you understand the sport before you start understanding judging. Make sure you understand the sport. So I think the hardest job as a judge is if your partner does agility and you don't, and you think, I'll go along on the weekend and I'll learn how to be a judge to do it. It's incredibly difficult. You really need an understanding of the sport. So watch, look, listen, learn about the sport, learn about dogs. And then, because if you're going to judge them, you know, that's a really strong word, judge, isn't it? You know?
Yeah.
That was a paragraph, not a sentence.
Yeah.
That's who I am, Emma. That's who I am. You know, why have one word when you can have 20?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's me. That is me.
That's been brilliant, Paul. Thank you for that. It's really interesting, and I definitely think we'll get you back on, because I think we can go further and further into a lot.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure, Paul. Thank you.
But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. And
okay, no worries. You're welcome.
We'll see you soon.
Rest of the day.
Bye.
Okay.
Take
See you
care.
later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul.
Bye.